When I started, I was 23, 24, young woman, very naive. And there wasn't a lot of women in leadership positions. So I got a lot of unsolicited advice from men that had been in the
Mm,
industry for like 30 plus years. And we were surrounded by big corporations. We were one of the only privately owned facilities. I got treated like the cute little girl with the cute
hmm
little
Yeah,
program.
hey kid.
Yeah. Oh, we won't see you in 6 months.
Right.
I wish that someone were to tell me back then, don't listen to those
hmm
fuckers. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
just keep going. If you have a dream, if you are sitting in that seat and you just know you're supposed to be doing what you're doing, just fucking go for it.
Camille is with Avery Lane for Women. I guess let's start off with maybe an overview of your program and where you are today, maybe physically, who you treat, how you treat. So that'd be a great place to start.
Avery Lane is coming up on our 10-year anniversary, which is so wild to me. At Avery Lane, we treat women struggling with both substance abuse and mental health issues with this overarching trauma focus, trauma specialized umbrella. So that's basically what makes up the fabric of our program is that, deep, rich clinical programming. We have a few different facilities in just north of San Francisco in Northern California. We have one primary mental health facility, which just treats women with psychiatric issues. And then we have a few primary substance abuse programs that treat substance abuse primary co-occurring mental health issues in both detox and residential level of care. We also have a step down PHP and IOP, but they're all, small groups, a lot of individualized care. We have women staying anywhere from a 7-day detox all the way through like a 6 to 9 months doing the full continuum, working with the same therapist through all levels of care.
Wow, you're serving a wide range on the continuum of care and you're helping a lot of women. And that's impressive for being only 10 years old. So, were you involved from the onset?
I was. So I'm the sole founder. I have a couple financial partners, but I'm the sole founder.
Oh, cool. That's
Mhm.
awesome. So how did this come about? Had you been an entrepreneur before? Where did the idea come from? Would love to hear kind of the founder story.
Yeah. So honestly, it was kind of a God shot, if I'm going to be honest. This was never planned, opening up my own facility. I had been working in treatment. I got sober when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
And I got my first job working in treatment, which was also unplanned, about a year into recovery. And it was at an all men's facility. And I remember walking into that facility, not knowing if I wanted to work in treatment. It was just kind of like I was just putting one foot in front of the other and doing the next right thing, all the things that we're taught, being in the 12-step program, and got the job on the spot. And I remember like a month later, being in that first clinical medical team meeting, I was invited in to take notes. I was their office manager, receptionist at the time at 19 years old. And I remember sitting in that meeting, and it was like that the clouds had separated, the light came in, and I was hearing the physicians, the therapists, the case managers, the techs kind of all talking about each person that was in treatment at the time and realizing like a bolt of lightning, this is what I'm supposed to do with my
Mm.
life.
At
Um,
19,
at
you
19.
had a moment of clarity. Wow,
Yeah.
that's impressive.
Yeah. So that next semester I ended up going back to community college or going to community college and to take my first psychology class, which started 6 years of night classes to get my bachelor's. But I just loved working in treatment. I love that every day when you walk in, you don't know what to expect. It's always a new day. There's always something different that's happening. It was always exciting. And I just wanted to learn like I was a sponge. So I basically did every job you can do working in treatment without having a license. So I learned how to bring insurance billing in house. I did admissions. I was the executive assistant to our CEO at the time. I helped our clinical director build a family program. I revised P&Ps with our operations director. I did everything, and it was so exciting and so cool, but without realizing it, I was learning how to run a facility.
Of course, you were doing the perfect internship
Yeah.
to start a
Yeah.
provider.
And the facility, when I first started working there, had only been around for 6 months. I was the second woman that they had hired at this men's facility, which was the perfect lesson in knowing boundaries,
Mm.
being 19 at a men's facility. But yeah, just being able to like be on the ground floor and all the like, the excitement, that startup energy of like, what else is possible? What can we like bring in to really like make a difference in these men's lives? And simultaneously, I was always also seeing, how special it was in a gender separate and specific
Hmm.
environment, watching a group of men come together and be vulnerable with each other. And that was truly special to just witness, especially being a woman witnessing that. But I remember hearing conversations over the years of people who had much more experience than I saying, we really need a women's program in Marin County. There was a county women's program that had closed a few years prior. And since then, there was a lack of women only treatment.
Hmm.
And being a woman in recovery, I was like, that would be really cool to be a part of one day. Never in
Right,
my
right.
mind did I think I'd be at
Sure.
the
Yeah,
helm.
maybe I'm the one that creates that.
No,
Yeah.
never. But 5 years into working at that men's facility, the old owner got together with me and he was like, I want to build this women's program that's needed in our community, and I want you to run it. And it was again one of those moments of like, this is what you're supposed to do.
Hmm.
Come hell or high water, this is what you're supposed to do.
That is so cool. So was he the owner of the place where you
He
were?
was.
Okay. Would
Mhm.
you identify him as a mentor?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I think that I've definitely learned a lot from a lot of leaders in the industry over my years. I think one lesson that I would tell anyone starting out in this business or opening up a new program is to come in with open eyes and almost naive
Hmm.
and ask questions and
Sure.
just learn, have conversations. And I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot of like, you know, how it felt to be that person on the ground and having like that direct patient contact of like what I wanted from my own leader, what I wanted to be brought
Hmm.
into, what I didn't want to be brought into, and that I have taken that with me ever since.
Is he still involved with your business, Avery Lane for Women?
He is not.
Oh,
So him and his father started as my financial
okay.
partners, and I mostly work with his father now.
Okay. Got it.
Mhm.
That's great. Had you been able to, like, anyone in your family been an entrepreneur?
Mm.
Had you been exposed to that? So, and I'll share with you, I had a middle class, working class upbringing, was blessed with some academic and professional opportunities early in my career. And I left kind of the corporate world in 2004 and I became an entrepreneur.
Mm.
And I started a few different businesses. No one in my family ever even had like a white collar professional job. So being an entrepreneur was something that was completely different. And I learned so much on the fly, as you did too. But did you have some sort of like comfort level with doing something like that?
Yes and no. So my father owned a construction company and he managed a small construction company in our county. And my mom had a couple different marketing agencies. She would work for companies and then would be an individual consultant. So I would see them, acting pretty independently,
Sure.
but I don't know if I like brought that into my experience. I think truly like my experience from the first day working in treatment until the current day has just been like showing up and putting one foot in the front of the other and asking like where am I supposed to be right now? But I was 23 at the time where I was given the opportunity to open up my own program. And I think honestly, being young and being naive
Totally.
to
Yeah,
the
it's an
larger
advantage. Yeah,
world
you don't
of
know what
this,
you don't know.
yeah, of
Right.
this insane
Hmm.
industry was really helpful because I got put through the ringer in my first couple of years. And I hope that, I would still make the same decision, but if I, knew what I knew then, but it sure helped being young and like you know?
Yeah. And I think there's an advantage too of like what I hear is that you saw a void and you wanted to help women.
Yeah.
And that there's a lot of provider owners that have this tremendous passion, calling, and low business acumen.
Hmm.
And somehow they figured out how to build a provider, and it's kind of all heart,
Hmm.
right? And they learn business over time.
Hmm.
And I think that facilitates being bold
Hmm.
when you just feel a calling of sorts, right? That's what I hear. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I remember when we first started, I hired an executive assistant who almost 10 years later is our director of operations. And I remember right before she started, I was like, oh crap, I need workers' comp insurance. And it was all these little things
Oh
that I
yeah.
just didn't think of. And I loved being able to like learn on the fly, but there's obviously it's come at, some challenges at sometimes where I'm like, I wish I just had the knowledge, the wisdom
Sure.
or the mentorship. But a lot of that has just been like asking questions. I think that, from day one, I just remember like if I could just help one woman, I would have set out my goal and completed the task that I wanted to complete here. But again, never in a million years did I think I'd be sitting here 10 years later, walking to my office on a daily basis, seeing Camille Hildebrand, CEO founder on my nameplate on my door, and realizing that's not my office and no one's like Ashton Kutcher is not going to pop out from a bush
Right,
saying,
right.
just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, I love when I hear these stories of people that really follow their heart and they trust it. And that's amazing. So I know a little bit about this area, Marin County, beautiful, right across the bridge from the
Mhm.
bay, right? And fairly wealthy, right? So on the continuum of care, you've got residential, POP, IOP, outpatient. There's also a payer continuum, right?
Mhm.
So are you private pay, commercial insurance? How does that work for
Sure.
Avery Lane for women?
So again, when we set out, I wanted to help, just one woman, but that one woman became like a broad spectrum of, what type of women on our demographic do we want to treat? And I really just wanted to create accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
So, providing that high end luxury living in beautiful Marin County with beautiful homes. I pick out all of our furniture, all of our sheets. I feel it all. I want them to have that, that high end experience with the best clinical care, the best of the best medical care and psychiatric care, but still be accessible to the
Mm-hmm.
people that need their $100 copay waived to be able to come in and access treatment. So we're primarily an in-network program. We're constantly looking at other contracts to add into our repertoire to be able to continue to be accessible. And then, since COVID, I've really been traveling around the country more and more, going to different conferences, getting our name out there, and creating a lot of more like partnerships with other groups that don't have don't have a women's program in their portfolio of being able to offer to their members or their employees. So we have women from all over the country, not just Marin County, but how we've built our program, it meets the needs of the person that can pay privately and also meets the needs of the people that, need a little bit more financial
Mm-hmm.
assistance to be able to come in.
I love that care access is challenging in this country. And historically, the level of care has been correlated with the level of wealth or income. So it sounds like you're kind of democratizing access to the highest level of care. Is that
Mhm.
accurate? I love
Absolutely.
that. That's awesome. Well, thank
Mhm.
you for doing that. You hit on specialization, and we see that we don't have great outcomes data yet. We do know that length of time leads to good outcomes. Specialization also does. So obviously you specialize in women's care. Is there anything else unique? So marketers talk about a unique differentiator. There are
Mhm.
several women's programs. Anything that you would like to share that you think is unique about Avery Lane for women that
Mm.
might not be found at other women's programs?
Mm. I've definitely connected with a lot of programs over the years and a lot of women's programs. I think specifically women's programs are few and far between, and we all have to stick together and support each other. And I think there's a lot of unique things that we all do. And I don't think, one program does it right or wrong. I think there's a program for everyone. And that's the best part of having such a vast industry is having all these options, which could be daunting for people that are searching for treatment, gift of
Mm-hmm.
recovery.com. But I think a couple of my favorite parts of our program are, first and foremost, is our culture. I I built and have grown Avery Lane in a way where, selfishly and not selfishly, I wanted a place where I would love coming to work every day, love the people that I work with, treat them as family, closest friends. And everyone kind of treats each other that way. It's kind of just trickled down, which is beautiful. I have these conversations with my managers and directors throughout the week where they're, having the same conversations that I have with them. I hear them having with their teams, and it's created an environment where there's support, there's respect and trust. And when something happens, when a crisis ensues, there's like you see a flock of people coming together to help that situation. You don't see anyone on the sideline saying, I'm not doing that, that's not my
Mm,
job.
I love it.
And then I think our trauma program, I'm always proud of. I'm not a clinician. I knew pretty early into my education that I didn't want to become a therapist. I really like supporting the people that support our people. And I think that, from the beginning, I wanted to bring in modalities that we don't usually see in treatment. People are still relapsing after treatment. I really wanted to make a difference in that. And our chief clinical officer today was actually our founding clinical director 10 years
Oh,
ago.
wow.
And part of why I partnered with her to bring her into Avery Lane was because her mind is brilliant, and she constantly thinks that question of what else is possible.
Hmm.
What else am I not thinking of right now that can dramatically change, the next step that I take here. So she had this incredible repertoire of all these different modalities, energy psychology, conscious recovery, and a lot of those modalities that spoke to me personally in my own recovery. So it's been fun over the years, kind of being a guinea pig in those different modalities. Brain spotting is a huge one,
Hmm.
and being able to track our outcomes to see when we make those small tweaks, like train our entire clinical team on brain spotting, and then watch what happens in our outcomes and see how it has benefited so many women and led to their recovery becoming much more stronger when they leave our program. That's been very cool. So, but I can brag about Avery Lane all day long.
Yeah, no, it's not bragging at all. I love the sound of your program. You're very open-minded and innovative, and I love studying psychology. I was a psych undergrad, and I did a graduate program in positive psychology. I also have an MBA. I love where business meets psychology,
Mm.
organizational behavior. And my favorite business strategy management guy is Peter Drucker. And he has a quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So he's saying it's all about the people that you have on your team. You talked about culture first. Does that correlate with low turnover on your staff?
I mean, I think so. I also really, I think, as a young woman entering a CEO position, I've loved just kind of supporting these other women into leadership positions. So most of our leadership team are people that, like my executive director is a great example. She started as a recovery counselor, a tech position, and she worked her way up into that ED role. Our director of operations, my first employee, has, worked her way up. But so being able to mentor these young women and kind of breaking that ceiling of like, when I entered this space, there wasn't a lot of women in leadership positions. Now, when I look around into a conference room, I see female CEOs
Mm,
everywhere, and it's so cool. So being able to kind of, share that with my team is really great. But at the end of the day, it's an invitation. So we're not for everyone on the client side. We're not for everyone on the staff side. Working in treatment is really hard,
hmm.
and we go above and beyond for our clients. And if someone feels like, maybe this isn't the right fit for me, that's okay.
Sure, of
But I
course.
think we invite people to bring in their creativity, bring in their yearn to grow personally, and while also professionally too.
It warms my heart to hear that you have a team of people that grew and learned together.
just like I did.
100%.
Mhm.
And acknowledging that what we're doing is hard, and a reminder that what we're signing up for is very difficult and it's not for everyone. So that said, entrepreneurship is really, really challenging. Every organization goes through real challenges. I like to look at them as like chapters or seasons. Could you talk about a hard chapter or a difficult season that you've had to go through?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest one that comes to mind is the most recent, which was COVID. When COVID hit, I think no one was prepared. No one had the playbook of how do we do this? I remember like talking to other programs locally. I'm like, what are you guys doing? And some were a little bit more cautious. Some were a little bit like, oh, we're not going to shut down. We're fine. We were probably one of the last like outpatient programs that went virtually just because we were trying to hold on for that human connection as long as humanly possible. But I remember like working at residential, it was, everyone struggled during that time in and out of the treatment industry. It was very apocalyptic. We were striving for human connection that we weren't allowed to have. I am very grateful that I still had the opportunity to go to a place to work every day because just being cooped up at home, I would have had a really hard time. But I remember being like holed up in the house, one of our residential houses at the time. I was doing overnight shifts. It was kind of like an all hands on deck type of experience because not only our clients were needing the support, but our staff were too. Everyone was needing that support. A lot of our staff were either immunocompromised or lived in a home where they couldn't risk working in healthcare. So yeah, it was really tough. I'm not cut out for overnight
Mm,
shifts. I'm not nocturnal, but I think it was like in those type of moments, it really brings a team together and being able to remind us like, if we could get through this, we can get through anything. But throughout all of our like, we've had, peaks and valleys throughout the years. And as being like the sole founder and I have never done this before, I think a challenge that I've had over the years is just how do we grow while, still keeping the essence of Avery Lane and little things like I remember when we went in 2023, we went from two residential houses of 12 beds total, 14 beds total, to adding a third substance abuse house to go to 20 beds, and then adding our first primary mental health residential, which started at 6 beds. So going from a small program to a larger organization, I had never done that before. And just trying to figure out what our org chart should look like was so complicated. And I'm, extremely lucky to have so many other friends that work in the industry where I could pick up the phone and be like, I am really struggling and I don't know what to do. What would you recommend? And having that ability to just like be vulnerable and say, like, I'm flailing.
next question was going to be, who can you lean on in those scenarios, in those
Yeah.
situations? I think people in long-term recovery who work a 12-step program have an advantage because we were taught when you're struggling, pick up the phone, right?
Mhm.
So you've got some industry colleagues that you can lean
Yeah.
on.
I think, being in recovery, I just celebrated 15 years last year. I think we definitely have that in our back pocket, but I've seen so many times just working in the industry, a lot of friends that have, I've met in the rooms, get jobs, work their way up in treatment, but when they start having a hard time, they're not calling and asking
Mm.
for help.
They're not practicing these principles in all their
They're
affairs,
not, but
right?
it's
And we
also
should.
it's hard because when you need help, all of a sudden you're breaking that boundary of I'm a professional having this conversation and now I'm a human being
Mhm.
when I'm supposed to show my community that I have everything together.
Right.
And I'm not a perfect human, but I'm also the sole founder and I am the captain of this giant ship now. And when anything happens in our world, in our organization, however big or small, I have to show up and be like, we have this, guys. We got this.
Mhm.
And it's not easy to hold that weight alone. And I've seen a lot of leaders, including in my past treatment experience, where I saw them crumble, I saw them relapse. And that was one of the first lessons when I opened was I cannot put Avery Lane, I cannot put my position before my recovery. My recovery has to be first and foremost. But a lot of times, like we lose sight of that. We get busy. We work 60-hour plus weeks. The job that we have, it, takes a lot of energy. So, but from the beginning, I was like, I need to have like 5 to 10 people on my, speed dial list that if anything happens, if I need support, I can call them. And I also have people in my life that will like tell me, hey, you need to call those people because I might be missing those yellow flags or red flags and just like, white knuckling my way
Hmm.
through. But I think it's hard to ask for help. And I think it's easy for us to say to our clients, just ask for help. And I think it's harder for people that work in treatment to say, hey, I need help.
Yeah, it's part of my disease was the lack of awareness of how to ask for help. Vulnerability was something that just didn't exist. And it's a superpower
Hmm.
of being able to acknowledge I need help. We're blessed here at recovery.com. We have a board of directors, which includes our co-founders, our investors. I'm an observer, so I get to sit in on that. And then we have a separate advisory council, which is 9 people. I built that out. We meet quarterly, and these people I can reach out to anytime. One of the recurring themes we have on Recovery Reach is a feeling of loneliness at the top. And it's something that it's not a good place.
Mm-mm.
And I get to talk to a lot of these people. It sounds like you use your tool set quite well. I want to go back personally a little bit. Congrats on 15 years.
Thank you.
Amazing. Getting sober at 17. So did you run with the wrong crowd, like junior high? Tell me a little bit about how you got there.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like the quintessential alcoholic where I was born and like the minute I took my first breath, it was like game over. So I definitely had that addictive personality. I have, addiction and mental health through both sides of my family. And I was a normal kid. Born in San Francisco, grew up in Marin County, grew up in a nice area, two loving parents. And I think that I always had that sense of loneliness. I was running around with an umbilical cord just trying to plug it in
Hmm.
somewhere. And when I was 12, 13, I was introduced to alcohol and drugs. And I finally put my umbilical cord,
Yeah.
plugged myself in somewhere where I was like, oh, this is the thing.
Hmm.
I finally feel like I can fit in. I finally feel a sense of belonging. But my reason for existing, drugs and alcohol, quickly became the thing that was slowly killing me. So I don't think it was a crowd thing. I think it was truly just like me, my biology, genetics. Um,
You believe you think you were born with this?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. I do too. Some of us I think are predisposed, and there are some people that I think have it and also work their way into it. Did you have or do you recall a moment of clarity? This has to stop. It's amazing. 17 years old, right? Like,
It wasn't
um,
by choice.
yeah. So did your parents ship you off
Yeah.
one time, several times? How
Mhm.
did that go?
Yeah. So I was living with my dad at the time, and I remember one of my last drunks. I came home from a party where I had completely embarrassed myself, and I remember like waking my dad up in the middle of the night and saying, "I got to get out of here. Like that something's wrong. I can't be here anymore." My One of my cousins had just completed suicide. My grandmother passed away a week later, and I just wanted out. I was not okay. And the night that I graduated high school, go to sleep at my dad's house, and in the middle of the night I'm woken up by both my parents and 2 random strangers, and they said, "You're going to go away for a while." And then everything went white. Like I don't remember anything that was said after that. I just remember like There was like a buzzing in my ear. People were shuffling. My parents all of a sudden were gone. And I was left alone with these two random women that were going to take me somewhere. I have no idea. I had no idea where. So, being a rebel teenage kid, I was basically dragged kicking and screaming
Wow.
through the Oakland airport, got on the plane. They basically said anything and everything just to get me on that plane. One of which was, well, when you get to where you're going, they're going to be able to talk to a therapist and they'll determine if you actually need it. And I'm like, I got this. I know what to say to get me out of
Mm.
this. But I knew there was a part of me that was like, something's wrong and I need help. But anytime someone tried to threaten my reason for existence, which was the drugs and alcohol, I blew up. I was pissed. I became territorial,
Hmm.
protective. I didn't want anyone to touch it. I ended up getting dropped in an adolescent wilderness program. And I was, city girl dropped in the
Mm.
dirt with no understanding, no concept of what time of day it was, no knowledge of how long we were going to be there for. You basically had no distractions apart from you just had to sit and deal with your shit, and then the therapist would determine when you got to leave. And I didn't find out that I was supposed to leave until the day I left.
Wow. And you've been sober since graduation, senior year in high school.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
That's amazing.
June 8th of 2011 was the
Holy
day I
cow.
graduated high school.
Wow. That's amazing. Did you obviously a tremendous transformational experience there?
Yeah.
And do you remember having an like, I want to, I want that to be done. I'm going to live a different life.
Not when I was in treatment. I was not like the star student in treatment. I was probably like, if my therapist were to like group who had the worst prognosis, I'd be at the front of the line. They wanted me to stay longer, but because I was turning 18 and I would have had to move to an adult group, and that would have been disruptive to my treatment episode. But I remember at one point I was on during wilderness, you do like an independent camp at one point. So they put me, a little bit off site of camp, out of eye shot and earshot, and for a few days. And it was just me in the middle of wilderness. And I remember sitting there at one point and watching the sunset on like beautiful desert in Utah. And I could feel my eyes and my sight come from behind my head where someone else was steering my body to like the forefront. And I could like all of a sudden I was like looking at my legs, looking at my hands and my fingers, and almost meeting my body for the first time since like I first
Wow.
picked up.
Ooh,
But it
that's
wasn't
heavy.
until I left wilderness and moved directly into sober living that I was introduced to the
Mm.
12 steps and this idea where, sobriety was a thing. But my therapist did give me a book called Addictive Thinking in
Mm.
Wilderness. And he was like, I think you should check this book out, which was great because no one was going to tell me that I was an alcoholic or an addict when I was there. But when I read about what your brain does as an addict, it all made sense.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. I got like chills when you shared that story about I think an awakening and I feel like you are so blessed that you found, I think, God's will for you so early is to do exactly the kind of work that you're doing. I'm going to bring it back to our field. I like to call behavioral health a field rather than an industry because we're dealing with humans. So, kind of an odd question here. Anything that you think is overrated in our field and anything that you think is underrated?
Hmm. I think, I've seen a lot of changes over the, 14 years that I've worked in this field. And I think one thing that has become underrated is just human connection.
Mhm.
I think it's when I first started having to market Avery Lane, I hated it. I hated like going up to people and be like, "Hi, how are you? I'm great. How are you? Do you like the weather? How long
Mhm.
are you staying for?" Having those routine conversations questions that you pull out of your back pocket that are like, what you say at conferences, that kind of stuff. I hated it. I loved like getting to the meat of the potatoes.
Yeah.
Like when I connect with someone that's in recovery, I find my brother, I find my sister. When I find someone that is in recovery, but also works in treatment.
I could not agree with you more. And I'm think back to Johann Hari's TED Talk. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection.
Mm.
And that's what we're designed for, is doing this together. And you're doing that. Thank you. Any advice that you received that turned out to be wrong?
I think when I started, I was 23, 24, young woman, very naive. And there wasn't a lot of women in leadership positions. So I got a lot of unsolicited advice from men that had been in the industry for like 30 plus years. And we were surrounded by big corporations. We were one of the only privately owned facilities. So I got treated like the cute little girl with the cute little program.
Yeah, hey kid.
Yeah,
Yeah, sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, we won't see you in 6 months.
Right.
So a lot of it was like, I just wanted to prove them wrong.
Yeah, I love it.
I
The
really
underdog.
did. Yeah.
It probably, great inspiration. Thank you for doubting me a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I wish that someone were to tell me back then, don't listen to those fuckers. Just keep going. If you have a dream, if you are sitting in that seat and you just know you're supposed to be doing what you're doing, just fucking go for it.
Well, I think I don't know if you identify it as this, but it's totally what I'm hearing is like you trusted a higher power. Is that accurate? Right?
Yeah.
Like you just knew this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm designed to do. And earlier you shared that, when you're young, right? Like that is a gift. Like, I don't care what I don't know. I'm doing this because there's people that I have to serve.
There was this unknowing, undeniable, like truth of like, this is what I'm meant to do.
Totally. I love it. Yeah. It's why you were put here.
Yeah.
And
100%.
and not like, I think most people never realize God's will for them. Unfortunately. Some of us, I would put myself in that category. I think I got it late, right? 48 years old, I got sober, realized, okay, I haven't been doing the work that was intended for me. When I see young people get it, it's just so amazing. And I think there's a courage. I have 3 sons. My oldest son is on a path that was just like, he figured it out. He's an assistant college basketball coach and he's 23 years old. And he just kind of said a number of years ago, this is what I'm doing. And people were like, what? And he did it. And it was a very, very odd path that he took. And I got to be a witness of him being true. I love when you get a coin, to thine own self be true. Right. And I think you've done that as much as I've heard. You are so inspiring. I'm really glad we got this time together. One more question. What do you think more behavioral healthcare leaders should be thinking about for the future?
I think one thing that's helped me show up on those days that are harder or those like seasons that feel unbearable is reconnecting to my why and remembering that 23-year-old girl that said, I just want to help one person. And I think that it's common to lose that original why working in this space. We get distracted by a lot of things, a lot of shiny things, a lot of like, futures that could be promised. But I think one thing that I've seen a lot is people just becoming disconnected to we're treating humans, we're helping humans, we're helping people. And please don't forget that. So
I think that is a perfect way for us to wrap up today. Thank you. So that this has been wonderful. I wish we had more time together. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.